The third element that I think is playing a very important role in European anti-Semitism is the question of the memory of the Shoah. We know that the Shoah is sometimes in Europe has become a subject of derision and jokes and unhealthy humor, supposedly humor. We know also that it has become an object of division of European society. And I think here we facing another reality is to say, how can we correct that? How can the Shoah be a subject of unity of Europe as it was supposed to be, because the teaching that came out of the Shoah were supposed to create a little bit more harmony between people and nations, and today we see exactly the opposite. And I think here, sadly, we have to come to the conclusion that somehow the transmission of the Shoah, we have failed. We are transmitting facts, we are transmitting maybe within the Jewish community, but somehow we haven't succeeded in transmitting a unity of value around the Shoah. And I think that would require an exercise of a very different nature than purely testimony and knowledge. And I know people often tell me and say, okay, well, we need the Shoah education, Holocaust education. And of course, Holocaust education is important, because without the fact, there's nothing we can teach. But the facts in itself do not create a feeling of unity. I think what is missing somehow is a common storytelling, if you want, of the Shoah. I don't really like the word, because storytelling suggests that it really didn't happen and it's a story making. So, but that's not what I mean. I mean, somehow, a way to reformulate that, maybe like ancient society used to do, by having a sort of a unifying myth that somehow can be used as the basis and the common ground for a society that builds itself together. And I think this is something that certainly in Europe, we really don't have about the Shoah. And I think that as long as we don't have that, the Shoah will play a dividing role deeper and deeper as the generation go, and in particular as the demographic structure of Europe changes. Because of course Europe today is not the same as Europe 50 years ago. We can, for very simple fact, refer to the Muslim community. The Muslim community, which is an important part of Europe today, is not connected to the Shoah in the same way as old European ancestry was. So somehow, if we don't take that into account, then we can't create that common ground.
But would you say the Shoah is still sort of the signal event that needs to be reckoned with in European religious discussion today? I ask because in the United States, the feeling is a little different. It's a little more distant somehow.
Yes, I think it's an event that that requires a lot of work in Europe. I think very few are the people who understand what it really means for the Jewish community, particularly because we don't know as European Jews if we have survived the Shoah, to put it in very blunt terms. The numbers within Judaism are totally declining, but beyond the question of numbers, I think the question is, has Judaism, European Judaism, has the vitality to recreate a sustainable Jewish life in Europe? And if it doesn't, then of course the Shoah is partly the reason why we can't do it. How to transmit the value of a tradition once you know that in the background you have this event and theologically you don't have the answers. People ask questions, the Jewish community asks questions. If people are drifting away from the Jewish community, it's not just because they're marrying out. It's also because somehow there is a real theological difficulty with the Shoah. And I think very few Jews take the measure of the weight of the Shoah in the actual survival of Judaism. And I think very few non-Jews in Europe understand what the Shoah means for the Jewish community in terms of the weight of uncertainty it puts on our shoulder today. So I think from that point of view, it needs to be really the subject of very intense scrutiny and work. And when you say that maybe in the States it's a little bit different because the distance is there, I think this is very true. The distance is a sort of a buffer zone that somehow maybe enables the Jewish community to continue even without a proper theological answer to the event.
Right.
We are confronted more directly to it, and the lack of theological answers is a total stumbling block at some stage.